Oh, thank you, thank you. Okay, so here I'll just go ahead and put that over towards you. There. Keep the camera off me. Um, some of the questions are related to the debacle that kind of led me over here because, like I said, I came here with nothing, did the Hawaiian thing, had one job at the Radio Shack up there, another job selling timeshares for Wyndham over there, and basically three jobs while I'm building the paper here to get in business. Here's one of the things. I know you're going to win, so one of the things I wanted to ask you was your effect as a senator in office. One of the things for the working man, the people doing the 2 to 3 jobs here, $10 an hour. Through this town, most people, if you're not having some corporate job over here, you're basically getting $10 or $7 an hour across the board. Even the food companies, the shopping companies, Sack and Saves, big companies like that, they won't give people full time here. They'll give you that 35 an hour, keep you on part time, keep you on partial benefits, but work you like full time. Walmart is famous for that. You've heard about all how they've been taken to the table for that. Foodland's doing the same thing. There's Sack and Save units doing that. What can be done so that people on the margins, the working people, me, I had to start this paper so I would have a job because I couldn't get anybody to give me a decent job out here. I had the lowest rates in the whole market here, $250 a year, $150 a year, and $1,000 a year for my corporate people. But still, even that, I have to give them following year free to get some traction in the market. It's given me a market lead, but I'm running 3 times as fast as the other guy. And what will be done for the people on the margins here?
Well, I think the best thing that I can do as a U.S. Senator is to make sure that our economy continues to grow and is strong and is diversified so that people can, in fact, get employed. That is the answer. The answer is that people have jobs, that they're good jobs, that they're good paying jobs, that they're full-time jobs, that they're jobs that they can pay for their housing and pay for their kids, pay for their medical insurance. And as we all know, that's a challenge nowadays throughout Hawaii and throughout our country. We've been through a tough recession here. And the number one priority that I can focus on as U.S. Senator is to grow that economy. And what that means is making sure that the levels of taxation regulation are reasonable so that small businesses can operate. Because in Hawaii, we're not talking about the macro businesses. We're talking about small businesses. We're talking about mom and pop operations or 10 or 20 employee contractors or food marts. And so what we need to do is to make sure that they can stay in business and hire people. We also need to be focusing on the industries that we do well here on the Big Island. Tourism, obviously, is an industry that is here. I think it's a good industry. We need to make sure that tourists continue to want to come here and spend their money here. When they come here and spend their money here, that creates good, solid jobs. We need to focus on the agriculture industry, which is a huge industry and can be even bigger on the Big Island here because that provides good, solid jobs for folks. In terms of the folks that are on the margins, we need to be sure that in our country we're taking care of making affordable their basic needs. And I'm talking primarily about healthcare as an example, which is a huge problem for folks, especially folks that are not employed full-time and are having to maintain their own medical insurance.
My wife has recovered from cancer twice.
and so I believe very much that every American deserves quality, affordable health care. And that's clearly a matter of the federal government coming in and making sure that that is available to all Americans. But number one, it's got to be about creating jobs because, if all we're going to do is from the federal government's perspective is just spend money to sustain people on jobs, that can get us through a recession, and I believe in doing it there. But that's not going to get us through 10 or 20 or 50 years. It's got to be about the economy.
People like me that ended up having to work the marginal jobs until I could get a company started where I could make my own income. That's one of the things I have in one of my web commercials, that armies of entrepreneurs in new companies instead of armies of job seekers. That will flip the tide and turn things around.
That's my whole program. The federal government is not there to create the jobs itself. The federal government is not there to make sure that every business succeeds or doesn't succeed. The federal government is there to create an overall platform-based atmosphere in which business can create the jobs, because that's where jobs are created, because people are investing in their businesses, because they're being entrepreneurs,
and where people can create
because
a
they have a
business.
vision. And they want to go out there and pursue that, and that's what's made our country strong, and we can't get away from that. And so I believe that the job of a United States senator is to help to create that overall atmosphere, and for Hawaii to focus on the industries that we can do really, really well right here on Hawaii Island and throughout the state.
And other industries that they're trying to bring here, I'm not very fond of the full-on offer where they are trying to get gambling into the islands here, but I am curious about the California version of it, where it's card-style casinos, basically minor level gambling, still gambling, but it's not lose the house type gambling.
Well, I'm running for United States senator, and that's at the federal level, and the U.S. Congress has not generally gotten into the question of whether a state does or doesn't have gambling, or what kind of gambling it is. Hawaii thus far has chosen not to have gambling. I've been through that evaluation in my own mind and as a state legislator, and gambling is a real mixed bag. Certainly, there are some benefits of gambling, but there are some downsides of gambling that are too often overlooked. Gambling is quite regressive on folks that have less money. Gambling definitely creates some social ills and some crime-related activities. That's why the police oppose gambling. That's why social service agencies oppose gambling. And so, from my perspective, what Hawaii decides on that is what Hawaii decides. But as a U.S. senator, I'm not going to have really a direct role in whether Hawaii does or doesn't have gambling.
And once you're in office, like I was mentioning earlier, the Republican base and the right-wing base trying to do whatever they can to upsert whatever Democrats are doing. I believe they had the vote today on the interest on the college loans. I was leaving the house. I don't even know if it went through, but the Democrats are for holding the rates down. The Republicans want the rates to shoot through the roof. Right now, I mean, just as me, as a businessman trying to make it, I don't really have access to SBA loans, even though we have the SBA here, and they're supposedly working with our banks. I tried to go through the same general exact method, and I ran into a basic stop sign where all the paperwork just stopped, and I have to wait on other people that aren't even available to do it.
Well, I served on the House Small Business Committee when I was in the U.S. Congress representing Hawaii Island in the United States Congress 02 to 07. And one of the principal challenges for the Small Business Administration was the manpower to process legitimate loan apps from small businesses like you. Because we do in fact have federal assistance to small businesses in a number of different ways, whether it be through the loan program, whether it be through small business preferences in federal contracting, where you're supposed to give a small business a certain share of the pie, or minority businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, down to basic assistance in starting a company and maintaining your company. It's the basic business plan. These are all great programs, and I believe in those programs. But the problem has been in Washington that the Small Business Administration has been underfunded for years now. In all honesty, big business kind of eats up small business in Washington because there's too much money coming out of big business in the political process. Small business has a tougher time playing there, and so the advocates of small business tend to be fewer and farther between than the huge companies of our country. So that's got to change in Washington.
Oh, absolutely, because it's, as you said, small businesses, this is the only way. We're going to have either an army of people looking for jobs or an army of people starting companies that can then hire. I would like to hire people. I'm a one-man band beating the big boys out here, but it's killing me to do it. And I'd like to hire 10 people that would love to work from home, but I can't do it because of all the different leaps that I have to go through.
Well, that's the biggest thing about small business. And I've been in the business community for 30 years. That's something that distinguishes me from my opponent in the Democratic primary here, who hasn't worked in the business community at all in her career. and I've run both of the businesses that I've worked for. So I know what it's like to be a business. And I know that from a small business perspective, it's a lot of elbow grease and a lot of perseverance to get to a successful business and to maintain it. Mm-hmm. And so what the feds can do from that perspective is give some help along the way to small businesses and try to make sure that they succeed. And of course, and again, I would say that here in Hawaii, that's got to be where the action is, because all of our businesses virtually are small businesses.
Exactly, and we know that we're poised for the economy to possibly slow down again because of all the things happening on the foreign markets that we have no control over.
Well, we have more control than we think over what's happening out there in the rest of the world. We're still the world's leading economic power. We're still the leader of the world here, and when we take care of our own ship at home in terms of our business community, our business climate, when we take care of our federal budget, the way other countries haven't taken care of them, we create a strong economy for ourselves. And when the United States has a strong economy, the rest of the world tends to follow that. When the U.S. slows down, the rest of the world tends to feel that. And so I don't buy the we have no control over what's happening. We have a lot of control, and we've simply failed to make the decisions that need to be made to chart a better course for ourselves, because Washington is just kind of in meltdown right now. And so that's why I say that in my Senate agenda, my three big items are fix Washington, grow our economy, and balance our budget. We take care of those three items, and we'll be just fine. If we don't take care of them, then we run a real risk of going the way of other countries like Greece and Spain and other parts of the world that are doing very well because they didn't face their problems.
For the future, like for instance with the Occupy Wall Street, the frustration out there, the college kids that so-called can't find a job, we need to pull back a little bit further back in high school. I'm the son of a retired business education teacher out of the Milwaukee public school systems. One thing that she noticed was they were getting far and far less resources year after year to teach kids at the high school level all the accoutrements of being an entrepreneur, so that they're in the mindset of going out there to start a business and grow a company instead of the mindset to hit the street with their diploma and say, somebody hire me.
Well, I think you really need both. Of course, again, as I said earlier, the vast majority of the jobs in our country are created by the private sector, not by the public sector. When the public sector employs people, it's because that's in furtherance of our overall goals. And the private sector is where the action is in terms of jobs. So you clearly need folks that are going to start and maintain businesses to create the jobs. And obviously you need people that are going to work in those businesses. So you really want to have the availability both of entrepreneurial activity and entrepreneurial assistance to get folks going, and also you want folks to be able to find those jobs when they want.
One of your big three, fix Washington. I agree. What's going to stand in your way?
Well, Washington is going to stand in my way.
And
right
the usual back
Washington
and forth
and Washington. We have really two great divides in our country right now. One is the extreme Democrat versus the extreme Republican divide, the rampant polarization in Washington, which is not just about Democrats versus Republicans. It's about an extreme Democratic view versus an extreme Republican view, where neither side is really interested in any kind of problem solving. But an equal division in Washington is kind of inside Washington versus everybody else in this country, and that's where the Occupy folks give voice, I think, justly to the frustrations of many of us that we are somehow left out of the picture in Washington, that we're disengaged, that we're ignored, and we're mad about it. And I'm mad about it. I mean, I've worked in Washington for 7 years of my life, and I believe in our country and its institutions, but I don't think we're doing the job right now. So that inside Washington mindset or culture is what's holding us back, and that's what stands in the way. That has to change. And I think the only way to change that is to get folks in there that are committed to that change, backed up by voters that want that change.
Well, apparently that's the same thing that the president is trying to do, and the same thing that you're trying to do. And like I hear on the Michael Savages, the Rush Limbaughs, and the people like that, You have entire radio networks spread across the country that are trying to preach to the whoever will listen a doctrine to just flat out oppose everything.
Well, that is that, but that's the exact challenge in our country today. Is that there's a whole line of culture on the far right and on the far left.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not excusing anybody here.
Yeah.
That the message that is carrying the message oppose everything. It doesn't matter. You don't have to think about what the other side says. All you have to know is that it's the other side saying it.
Mm-hmm.
It's automatically off the table. No communication, no surrender, no problem solving, no attempt at any kind of consensus.
And they keep
And
repeating it over and
what do
over.
you expect? I mean, if you did that in a marriage, your marriage would be over.
Mm-hmm.
If you did that in a business among your partners, your business would be over. So why should we expect that somehow our government's going to function better because people are interested in a holy crusade against the other side?
So in other words, in order to tie everybody down, to get people to sit down with a goal of actually accomplishing something at each session, which committee do you need to be the head of in order to make sure that gets done? Because once you're in there, then you have to leave a couple other things.
I think, well, first of all, I don't believe that you need to be the head of a committee to pull this off. Good. Second, I can't do it alone. So I need to go up to Washington, and there's 100 senators, only 100. That's why this is one of the most critical elections in our country this year. This is a national election. The fact that it's in Hawaii means nothing to whether it's a national election. Every U.S. senator has to be a national leader today. So this election in Hawaii is just as important as Senate elections in Virginia and Montana and New Mexico and elsewhere in our country. And I believe and hope that what's going to happen here is that voters in those other states are just as fed up and frustrated as the folks in Hawaii are, and that will result in more people in the U.S. Senate interested in exactly what I'm talking about. And so I think that I expect to find fellow travelers there when I get there that I can hook up with and work with.
And one of the other things, the looming 800-pound gorilla that even the president's having trouble with, the deficit is now at $14 billion, climbing by the second, by the minute. What can possibly slow down that spigot of red ink and yet not leave the people that are already on the margins with even less? That's why I say I just see an explosion of entrepreneurial ability. That's what brought us out of it last time.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're referring to is the national debt. And the national debt is now closing in on 16 trillion, not billion.
Oh,
trillion.
Indeed, I did say billion.
You forgot a few zeros.
Indeed. Which makes it even more frightening, of course.
But to put it in perspective, when I went to Congress in 2002, the national debt was $6 trillion. Today it's $16 trillion.
And interest and everything is involved.
That's the total national debt. That's how much we collectively all owe to somebody for the money we've borrowed. And we're running a deficit of over $1 trillion a year. So it's a crisis. And anybody that says it's not a crisis either doesn't understand it or has got his or her head in the sand. How do you deal with it? Well, you obviously have to. First of all, as the great saying goes, when you're in a hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. So that means that you cannot be running $1 trillion annual deficits and expect your debt to go down. The math doesn't work. The way you do that, I believe, is both on the revenue and the expense side. On the revenue side, first of all, the best thing on the revenue side is to have a growing economy, because a growing economy generates taxes. So as we grow our economy, we not only provide jobs, but generate revenues for our government to be able to use. Second, I think that our tax load has created a great disparity between upper income and everybody else. I didn't support the Bush tax cuts for that reason on the upper income. Those should be suspended or allowed to expire more accurately. If we do that, I think that we can provide a reasonable level of revenue to support a reasonable level of revenue. But that's not the only thing to do. You also have to slow down the rate of growth and expenses as well. It's not that we have to cut anything. It's that we have to not grow so fast. We have to stabilize things. So if you stabilize the growth in the federal budget on the expense side and allow the revenues to catch up, that will give you a balanced budget over time, which will then allow you to stabilize your debt and start to reduce it.
And if that is working, in order to put things into motion in that fashion, is it going to require a majority Democratic Senate? Or is it going to require a majority Democratic Congress? Is there a ground where you guys can work together, Democrat and Republican, to not leave the table until something is accomplished in session?
If the American people really want to change Washington and send folks to Washington that believe in exactly what you just said, then the answer is yes. If we're simply going to accept the status quo in Washington, then Washington has already proved that they can't do it. So it has to change before we can pull that off. There's encouraging signs already. For example, in the U.S. Senate last year, there was the Gang of Six, which was 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, who sat down and actually came up with a good balanced budget plan. And they were kind of pretty much shouted down by the respective leaderships. But if you have a Gang of Six that expands to a Gang of 20 or 30, all of a sudden it's not just a minority group. It's a powerful critical mass that can drive the agenda of the Senate. So if we do it that way, we can pull it off.
And looking into future tense, beyond your Senate term, like I was telling you, your presidential run, you might have to go all the way to the top to get something done. Are you thinking about it yet?
No, I'm not thinking about that at all. If I'm elected to the Senate, then I'm gonna stay there and do the best job I can for as long as the voters will have.
Well, good, because Hawaii's had, a couple of 50-year almost senators.
Well, Senator Inouye is about to become the longest-serving United States senator in the history of our country. And that's quite an accomplishment. And that's meant a great deal to Hawaii. That's the good news. The other side of that coin is that sometime in the next generation, his career will come to an end. And so this election is not just about who's going to take over for Senator Akaka. It's also about eventually who will be the senior senator from Hawaii. And I think that makes this election an election of generational importance to Hawaii. Because this is about a transition in leadership in congressional delegation. And I think folks should evaluate it like that.
So once in the Senate, you will be, like you said, on your big 3. You're going to try to make darn sure that Washington, basically, its biggest enemy is not itself. That the economy is a matter of balancing out the economy, so that once it gets on a trajectory, it can kind of remain on the trajectory without the bumps and the fallouts.
You want it to be sustainable over time. You want you're always going to have cycles and rhythms, but what you want is those cycles and rhythms to be relatively narrow, in a narrow band. You don't want an economy that slashes and crashes and burns every 4 or 6 years. I mean, that just does complete damage over the long run. You want it to be stable. You want the business climate to be a stable business climate, and you want to be participating in the rest of the world in a world economy that's doing well, and that's particularly important to us right here in Kailua-Kona as we look out at this beautiful ocean, where what's happening here is that the folks in China and India, Australia and Europe are doing well economically. They want to come here, period, and they will come here and spend their money here. If they're not doing well, that's a discretionary item. They're going to stay home and try to pay for their food and their housing. So as we create a strong world economy, that helps us directly right here in Hawaii.
That's what I wanted to kind of get down to. Your aspirations, if it was beyond the Senate or once you get in the Senate, just get the job done and make the changes that will trickle down and help.
Those are the limits of my aspirations, and I think those are pretty good, solid, high aspirations right there.
Indeed. And
again, I mean, if I am elected to the Senate, then I think that some of the things that I'm talking about will take more than just one Senate term to pull off. The Senate term is 6 years, which seems like a long time, but the budget is going to take a long time to fix, and it's going to take a long time to get the economy stable and growing on a sustainable level. It's going to take a long time to change a culture in Washington that has grown up over the last couple of decades that's just become corrosive. So, those things don't happen overnight. They don't happen in one 2-year U.S. House term, and some of them don't happen in one U.S. Senate term.
And if worse comes to worse, like, for instance, if President Obama doesn't get reelected and Romney does make it in, and, of course, the Republicans are going to want to clean house and gut everything that the Obama administration has done, and any progress probably is going to go right out the, baby with the bathwater with it.
Well, clearly it's a big decision in the presidential election, and there are two roads to go down here, and the American people are going to make that decision. Whichever road we go down, Washington still has to be fixed. The budget still has to be balanced, and the economy still has to grow. So the crying needs of our country don't change. The question is which avenue is going to get us that kind of a change that we want. And I think that ultimately that's what the American people are going to decide, because they want change. We want change. We don't want the status quo. And so, whose vision of change? President Obama's or Governor Romney's?
Well, I kind of agree with President Obama's method of change, because even when he made his great speech that put him on the map at the 2004 at the Staples Centers in Los Angeles, I remember a famous quote from him. He had $28.74 in his pocket when he made the speech of his life that put him in contention for the presidency. He couldn't even afford the parking at Staples Centers at the time. And he's on a professor's salary. So it shows you that even if you have money and high income, you can still get grinded out. You still have to keep pursuing, and better. And one of the things I like about what you just told me is the Senate race is not a stepping stone for you. That is a position where you can get things done, and you're determined to get things done.
I'm not trying to be president. I'm not trying to be governor. I'm not trying to be anybody but a U.S. senator for Hawaii over the next generation.
And that will be effective for us. And, you get my vote for that, because that's what we need. We need somebody that's in it for the long run, that's in for the many dog fights and scratches that you'll get. You're ready for the fight.
I feel like I've been training up for an entire lifetime to do this job. I've had a successul and a good life that's been full of challenges and failures, and I think that they have brought me to a point where I can do this job, and I hope to do it.
Well, future Senator Case, you make us proud.
Okay, thank you very much.
Got my vote, sir.
Thank you.
Indeed.